Chapter 1. The Whisper of a Lie. The soft hum of the quantum processor in my home laboratory was usually a comforting sound, a metallic lullaby that underscored the intricate dance of data and discovery. I, Dr. Alistair Finch, had always found solace in the ordered world of neural pathways and bioelectrical signals. My work, the culmination of a decade dedicated to bridging the gap between mind and machine, was centered on the Cognilink, a marvel of biomedical engineering, a whisper-thin implant designed to interpret and translate neural activity with unprecedented clarity. It was my magnum opus, a potential revolution for those silenced by neurological damage, a secret I guarded closely, its human trials still in their very nascent, carefully controlled stages. Outside the frosted glass door of the lab, life was supposed to be simpler, warmer. 10 years with Sarah had, I'd believed, woven a tapestry of shared dreams and comfortable affections. Our son, Leo, a vibrant 6-year-old with my inquisitive eyes and Sarah's effortless charm, was the brightest thread in that fabric. We had a life, a beautiful architect-designed house in the quieter suburbs, a testament, I thought, to our shared journey. Sarah managed the household with an elegance that I, lost in the complexities of synaptic firing patterns, deeply admired. Or so I told myself. The annual physicals were a routine we'd adopted after Leo's birth, a nod to responsible adulthood. Sarah usually breezed through them, her vitality a given. I, on the other hand, often emerged with a list of gentle admonishments about stress levels and caffeine intake, occupational hazards for a man who frequently chased breakthroughs into the small hours of the morning. This year, however, the routine fractured. It was a Tuesday, gray and drizzling, when Dr. Ramirez called, her voice carefully neutral. "Alistair, could you come in? It's regarding Sarah's results, and perhaps it would be best if you came alone initially." A knot of cold dread tightened in my stomach. "Alone? Is everything all right, doctor?" "It's just some findings we need to discuss in detail. Preliminary, of course, but it's better to have a clear conversation first." Preliminary. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken possibilities. I spent the next hour in a state of suspended animation, the hum of the lab suddenly grating, the lines of code on my monitors blurring into meaningless hieroglyphics. When I finally sat opposite Dr. Ramirez, the carefully arranged diplomas on her wall seemed to mock my own scientific confidence. "Alistair," she began, her gaze compassionate but direct. "Sarah's scans showed an anomaly in her brain, specifically in the right frontal lobe. We ran further imaging. It's consistent with a glioma. Given its characteristics, we're looking at a high-grade tumor, likely a glioblastoma." Glioblastoma, the word, clinical and cruel, landed like a physical blow, my own field. I knew its aggressive nature, its grim prognosis. Sarah, my vibrant, beautiful Sarah, who complained only of occasional headaches she dismissed as stress. My mind, trained to analyze and dissect, recoiled. This wasn't data, this was my wife, the mother of my child. "No," I managed, the word a dry rasp. "There must be a mistake. She's perfectly healthy, just some headaches." Dr. Ramirez slid a series of scans across the polished desk. The shadowed mass, stark against the delicate architecture of Sarah's brain, was undeniable. "The symptoms can be insidious at first, Alistair. Headaches, subtle personality changes, perhaps some cognitive fuzziness. The location is concerning. We'd need to do a biopsy for definitive grading and molecular markers, of course. But the imaging is highly indicative." My world tilted. The careful order of my existence, the predictable rhythms of family and research, imploded. Sarah, only 36. Leo. How could I tell her? How could I watch the light dim in her eyes, watch fear take root? The thought was unbearable. "Treatment options?" I asked, my voice hollow, the scientist in me clinging to procedure. "Aggressive resection if possible, followed by radiation and chemotherapy. It's a difficult road, Alistair, and the prognosis, we have to be realistic, but every case is different. Early and aggressive intervention is key." I nodded, numb. Walking out of the clinic, the drizzle felt like needles on my skin. My mind raced, not with treatment protocols, but with a desperate, illogical urge to shield her, to somehow absorb the blow myself. This illness, this monstrous thief, couldn't have her. It felt like a personal affront, a cosmic error. Back in my lab, the Cognilink prototype lay gleaming under a focused light on my workbench. It was a marvel of miniaturization, barely larger than a grain of rice, designed for minimally invasive implantation. Its purpose: to listen to the brain's silent language. I'd poured my soul into it. Sierra, she'd even been a willing volunteer for some of the early non-invasive sensor tests, fascinated by the concept, though she never fully grasped the depth of its potential. She'd once joked, "So, one day you'll know exactly what I'm thinking when I say I'm fine." We'd laughed. The memory now felt like a shard of glass in my gut. A wild, desperate idea began to form, a monstrous perversion of my scientific ethics, born from a place of profound shock and a sudden, overwhelming, perhaps misguided sense of protection. I had the raw scan data, the diagnostic reports. I also had highly sophisticated imaging software, and skills in digital manipulation honed from years of creating presentations and research visuals. It was a mad impulse. I could change the names. I could make the report mine. I could tell Sierra that I was the one who was sick. I could bear the fear, the uncertainty. I could spare her, at least for a while, the crushing weight of this diagnosis. She could focus on me, on Leo, without that terror gnawing at her. It was a twisted act of love, perhaps, or a desperate man's folly. I wasn't thinking clearly, not with the precision I usually prided myself on. I was thinking like a husband, a father, terrified of the abyss that had just opened before us. The process was sickeningly easy. Scan the report, isolate the patient information fields. My hands trembled as I typed my own name, Alistair Finch, over hers. I adjusted the patient ID, the date of birth. I even subtly altered the specific location terminology of the tumor to be slightly less precise, something a layman might misinterpret but would still sound convincing. The result, printed on high-quality paper identical to the clinic's, looked authentic, chillingly so. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was a profound betrayal of truth, a dangerous charade. But the image of Sarah's face, etched with fear, propelled me forward. That evening, Leo was already asleep, his small face peaceful under the dim glow of his rocket ship nightlight. Sarah was in the living room, curled on the sofa, idly flipping through a magazine. She looked up as I entered, a soft smile gracing her lips. "Rough day, darling. You look pale." The altered report felt heavy in my hand, a toxic secret. I sat beside her, the springs of the sofa creaking under my sudden weight. "Sarah," I began, my voice hoarse, trying to inject the right amount of tremor, of devastation. I got a call from Dr. Ramirez about my results." Her smile faltered. "Your results? I thought you were fine. Just the usual stress warnings." I handed her the paper. "They found something. In my brain." I watched her face, my own a carefully constructed mask of anxiety and dread. She took the report, her brow furrowed. Her eyes scanned the clinical text, the terrifying words, "high-grade glioma, suspected glioblastoma multiforme." Her breath hitched. The color drained from her face, leaving her skin almost translucent. "Alistair, no, this can't be you?" Her shock was palpable, her distress seemingly genuine. A wave of guilt washed over me, so potent it almost made me confess. This was cruel, a terrible burden to place on her, even if my intentions were, in some warped way, protective. They said it's aggressive," I stammered, playing my part, my own fear of her actual diagnosis lending a terrible authenticity to my performance. "We need to act fast." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with what I took to be horror and disbelief. She dropped the report as if it burned her. "Oh my God, Alistair, oh my God." She looked utterly stricken. For a moment I thought, this is right. I am shielding her from the worst of it. She is strong, she will help me fight this, and when she is truly well, somehow, I will make this right. Then something shifted. The Cognilink. It was a recent refinement to the system, a secure encrypted app on my private lab-issued smartphone that provided real-time text-based transcriptions of dominant thought patterns from an active implant. Sarah had had a Cognilink implant for nearly 3 months. It was the latest iteration, the S-series, designed for long-term passive data collection to refine its neurolinguistic algorithms. She'd agreed, somewhat reluctantly, after I'd framed it as a non-critical contribution to my wellness monitoring research, emphasizing its potential to track subtle stress biomarkers. I hadn't activated the direct thought transcription feed. Until now, driven by a sudden, inexplicable compulsion, a scientist's urge to observe the data, I mumbled something about needing a glass of water and retreated to the kitchen. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, opened the secure app, and selected Sarah's active CogniLink ID. The feed was usually a jumble of background neural noise until specific cognitive patterns were targeted for translation. But I had recently pushed a silent, experimental firmware update, one designed to capture and prioritize emotionally charged ideation. The screen flickered. Text began to scroll. Notification: Sarah Finch CL02, emotional valence high, primary thought cluster identified. Transcript: Oh, thank God, it's him, not me. The money, all of it will be mine soon. Julian will be so pleased, that new sports car he wants, finally. I stared at the words, my blood turning to ice. My breath caught in my throat. Her lips hadn't moved. Her face in the living room, when I glanced back, was still a mask of apparent shock and concern, tears welling in her eyes as she stared blankly at the discarded report. But the CogniLink, my creation, was relaying a different, monstrous truth. Notification: Sarah Finch CL02, secondary thought cluster, financial planning. Transcript: Mustn't look too eager. Play the devastated wife. He'll probably refuse aggressive treatment if he thinks it'll bankrupt us. Perfect. No messy chemo, no long decline, just gone. And then freedom. Julian and I on that yacht. The phone nearly slipped from my numb fingers. Julian? Who the hell was Julian? The name was a foreign object lodged in my mind. The casual cruelty of her thoughts, the calculated avarice, the sheer depth of her deception, it was like a physical assault. My carefully constructed reality, my 10-year marriage, the woman I thought I knew, shattered into a million razor-sharp fragments. The hum of the refrigerator beside me suddenly sounded deafening. The headaches she'd complained about, were they real? Or part of some long con? No, Dr. Ramirez's diagnosis of her tumor was genuine. The irony was a bitter, corrosive acid in my soul. She was the one who was sick, truly sick, and she was celebrating what she believed to be my impending death. A cold smirk, an expression I didn't recognize as my own, began to play on my lips. My grief for her diagnosis, my guilt over the deception, evaporated, replaced by a chilling clarity. The love I'd felt, the protective instinct, curdled into something dark and potent. You're the one who's sick, Sarah, I thought, the words like ice shards in my own mind. And since you're so keen on avoiding treatment, so be it. I smoothed my expression, erased the nascent, horrifying smile, and walked back into the living room, my phone tucked away, its silent notifications a damning, constant stream of her true self. The game had just changed. And I, Dr. Alistair Finch, the man who thought he was orchestrating a lie to protect his wife, was about to become a very different kind of architect. The architect of her undoing, using the very illness she unknowingly harbored as my stage and my own invention as my unseen informant. The hum from my lab no longer sounded like discovery. It sounded like the whisper of a perfectly tailored revenge. Chapter 2. The Obsidian Shard of Truth. The air in our living room, moments before thick with Sarah's feigned distress, now felt thin and sharp, like breathing in microscopic shards of glass. Each notification from the CogniLink app, scrolling silently on the phone hidden in my pocket, was another stab, twisting the obsidian shard of truth deeper into my gut. Julian. The name echoed, a mocking counterpoint to the tender endearments Sarah was now murmuring, her hand resting on my arm, her touch, which I once craved, now feeling like the cold caress of a viper. Alistair, darling, we'll fight this, she was saying, her voice artfully choked with emotion. Her eyes, those clear blue pools I had once believed reflected a soul as pure, were now glistening with perfectly timed tears. Whatever it takes, we have savings. Your research, surely there are grants, compassionate funds? My own research. The irony was a monstrous, silent scream in my mind. My life's work, the CogniLink, was not a tool of healing in this instance, but an instrument of revelation, dissecting not neural pathways, but the rotten core of my marriage. Notification: Sarah Fingello, internal monologue. He looks like he's actually buying this. Good, keep him focused on fighting. The more he worries about treatment, the less he'll scrutinize the finances. Julian was right, play the supportive saint. Julian was right. So this Julian was not just a fleeting fancy, but a confidant, a co-conspirator in this grotesque play. The sheer audacity of it, the depth of the betrayal, threatened to buckle my knees. I wanted to roar, to smash the carefully curated serenity of our home, to confront her with the vile stream of her thoughts. But a new, chillingly detached part of my brain took over. the scientist, the observer. This was data, invaluable, horrifying data, and I needed more. I forced myself to meet her gaze, to reflect the sorrow she was projecting. Sarah, I don't know. This kind of illness, the treatments are brutal, and the cost. Leo is so young. Our savings, maybe it's not worth it. The words felt like treason to the real patient, the woman sitting before me, unknowingly harboring the very disease I was now claiming. But I had to test her to see how her real thoughts, unfiltered by the cognilink, aligned with the scenario she apparently craved. Her eyes widened, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Relief? Surprise? Quickly masked by a fresh wave of performative anguish. Alistair, don't say that! Don't you dare even think it. We will fight, for Leo, for us. She squeezed my arm tighter. My phone vibrated. Notification. Sarah Fintu, emotional valent positive. Primary thought cluster. Yes, perfect. He's saying it himself. I don't even have to push him, so consider it my dying husband. Julian will be ecstatic. This is moving faster than we hoped. The casual cruelty, the triumphant lilt in her silent words, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. The us she spoke of was a phantom, a cruel joke. Her us clearly involved Julian and my rapidly depleting lifespan. She continued her facade. We need to see specialists, Alistair. The best. I'll call Dr. Ramirez tomorrow, get referrals. We won't spare any expense. Notification. Sarah Finch EL002. Strategic planning. Better make a show of calling Ramirez. Ask about experimental treatments. He needs to believe I'm trying. Then, when he bravely refuses, it's all on him. God, this watch Julian picked out for me is exquisite. Can't wait to wear it without having to hide it. A watch. Julian had bought her a watch while she was planning my demise. The pettiness of it, the sheer unadulterated greed, was almost more shocking than the affair itself. It painted a picture of a woman so morally bankrupt, so utterly devoid of empathy, that she could accessorize her betrayal. Suddenly her phone, lying on the coffee table, chimed with an incoming call. She glanced at it, and a subtle, almost imperceptible tension entered her shoulders. The caller ID wasn't visible from my angle. Oh, she said, a little too brightly. It's just work. My boss, probably wondering about that Henderson account. I should take this. It'll just be a minute. She gave me a quick, pitying smile, as if I were already too fragile for the mundane intrusions of the working world. As she stepped into the hallway, ostensibly for privacy, my own phone buzzed again. A different kind of notification this time, one I'd programmed the cognilink to flag. Proximity alert. Sarah Finch L02, initiating encrypted communication. Keyword analysis. Julian, rendezvous, hotel. My blood ran cold. The implant wasn't just reading thoughts. It could, with the latest firmware, detect patterns associated with specific communication apps if the neural activity indicated a strong intent and association with a known contact. It wasn't foolproof for content, but it flagged the intent and associated names if they were dominant in her concurrent thoughts. Then the thought transcriptions resumed, urgent and excited. Notification. Sarah Finch L02. Damn it, Julian, why call now? He's gonna get suspicious. Okay, play it cool. He misses me already, the little devil. Yes, Mr. Henderson, the report is almost ready. God, I need to see Julian. He said he booked that suite at the Sovereign, room 1208. A little celebration. He's so impatient. The Sovereign Hotel, room 1208. Not a work call, a tryst, a celebration of my supposed impending death. The betrayal was no longer an abstract horror relayed by lines of text. It had a time, a place, a room number. The cold fury that had been simmering within me now coalesced into a diamond-hard resolve. I needed to see it. I needed the visceral, undeniable proof to sear away any lingering vestiges of the man I used to be, the husband who might have, even for a moment, pitied her for the illness she truly carried. Sarah returned, her expression smooth, professional. All sorted. Just a minor crisis. You know how it is. She glanced at me. You look terrible, Alistair. You should rest. I might need to pop out for a bit, pick up some groceries and maybe some of those calming teas you like. Notification Finch KL02. Perfect excuse. He won't question it. Must make sure I don't bring his illness home with me. Ugh, need to shower the moment I get to Julian. Room 1208. Can't wait. Of course, dear, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Don't worry about me, I'll just process things. Leo was sound asleep, his breathing soft and regular. Our house was equipped with a state-of-the-art security system, including audio-visual monitors in his room that fed directly to my phone. He would be safe. Less than 20 minutes after Sarah's car pulled out of the driveway, her tires crunching on the gravel with an air of jaunty escape, I was in my own car, the engine a low growl in the quiet suburban night. The drive to the Sovereign was a blur of red taillights and grim purpose. The Sovereign was an upscale boutique hotel downtown, known for its discreet luxury, the kind of place one went to be unseen. Each beat of my heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum accompanying the cold, methodical thoughts now taking root in my mind. I wasn't just a cuckolded husband. I was a scientist who had stumbled upon a uniquely horrifying data set, and the experiment was far from over. I parked across the street, my car cloaked in the shadows of an office building closed for the night. The hotel's entrance was tastefully lit, a beacon for clandestine encounters. I didn't have to wait long. A taxi pulled up, and Sarah emerged. She was wearing a stylish trench coat I hadn't seen before, her hair expertly tousled, a vibrant scarf at her neck. She looked radiant, alive. There was a predatory grace to her movements as she glanced around, then hurried inside. No groceries, no calming tea. My phone, clutched in my hand, displayed the Cognilink feed. Notification: Sarah Finch, KL02. He's probably on the couch moping. Good, more time for me. Julian said he has champagne. God, I hope 1208 has a good view. I deserve this. After all these years of this. This, I presumed, meant her life with me. The life I had struggled to build, the stability I thought we cherished. The casual contempt in her thoughts was like a corrosive acid. Minutes later, a sleek, dark sports car, a Maserati, if I wasn't mistaken, the kind that screamed new money and dubious ethics, pulled into the valet spot. A man emerged. He was younger than me, perhaps early 30s, with artfully disheveled dark hair, a smug, handsome face, and an air of effortless arrogance. He handed his keys to the valet with a flourish and strode into the hotel. Julian, I presumed. He looked exactly like the kind of man who would call a woman little devil and celebrate his lover's husband's death sentence with champagne in room 1208. The image of them together, behind those closed doors, celebrating my fabricated illness while her real one ticked away like a time bomb, was a portrait of exquisite cruelty. The last embers of any softness in me died. There would be no confrontation tonight, no screaming accusations. That would be too simple, too clean. My revenge, I realized, would be a meticulously crafted masterpiece of psychological torment, built upon the foundation of her own deceit and the terrible truth of her hidden illness. As I drove away from the Sovereign, the city lights blurring through a haze of cold fury, a memory surfaced, our wedding photo on the bedside table. Sarah, beaming, leaning into my shoulder, the picture of bridal bliss. I once thought that lean was for a lifetime, a symbol of her trust, her love. What a fool I'd been. That image, once a source of warmth, now felt like a taunt. Her laughter, her sighs of contentment, her whispered endearments to Julian, I didn't need to hear them. The Cognilink painted a vivid enough picture of her thoughts. When I returned home, the house was silent, cold. Leo was still asleep, an innocent anchor in my capsized world. I stood over him for a long moment, the fierce, protective love I felt for him a stark contrast to the icy void where my love for Sarah had resided. I picked up my phone. The Cognilink app was still active. Notification: Sarah Finch, CL002, post-coital contentment. Fragmented thoughts: amazing, so much better. He actually listens. Soon, all mine. Alistair who? A humorless laugh escaped me, startlingly loud in the stillness. Alistair who? Oh, she would remember Alistair Finch. She would learn, in excruciating detail, exactly who he was and what he was capable of. The amateur Photoshop skills I'd used on that report were just the beginning. I was a neuroscientist, a man who understood the intricate machinery of the mind, and I had a direct line into hers. This gift, as the original spark of my twisted plan had termed it, was about to be weaponized. The initial shock had passed. Now, it was time for the scientist to get to work. The experiment was about to enter a new, far more active phase. The objective: a perfect, clinical, and utterly devastating counterattack. Chapter 3: The Alchemy of Deceit. The dawn that followed my vigil outside the Sovereign Hotel was a pallid, indifferent gray, mirroring the landscape of my soul. Sleep had been a fleeting, tormented thing, punctuated by the silent, venomous updates from the Cognilink app, a constant feed of Sarah's contented sighs and Julian's murmured praises from their celebratory tryst, all relayed as cold, hard text. Each notification was another nail hammered into the coffin of the man I once was. But from that coffin, something else was stirring, colder, sharper, infinitely more dangerous. Leo, bless his innocent heart, was my first anchor to the grim reality of the day. I woke him gently, his small, warm hand instinctively clutching mine. His sleepy smile, unclouded by the adult darkness festering in his home, was a momentary balm. As I made him breakfast, dinosaur-shaped pancakes, a Saturday ritual, I compartmentalized. The loving father making breakfast was one Alistair. The calculating architect of revenge was another, watching, waiting, his blueprint for Sarah's destruction already taking shape in the recesses of his mind. Sarah eventually emerged, looking surprisingly fresh, a little too bright. She wore a silk robe I recognized, one I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years prior. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. She fussed over Leo, a perfect portrait of maternal affection, then turned to me, her expression carefully modulated to concern. "Alistair, how are you feeling this morning?" she asked, her voice soft, solicitous. Her hand reached for my forehead, a parody of care. I leaned away slightly. "Tired," I said, letting a genuine wariness infuse my tone. It wasn't entirely a lie. The night's revelations had been exhausting. Didn't sleep much. Notification, Sarah Finch Goroth 2. Good, let him waste away. The less he sleeps, the faster this will go. Julian wants to go to Monaco next month. Need to make sure the funds are liquid by then. Monaco. Her ambition knew no bounds. While I was supposedly wrestling with a terminal diagnosis, she was planning European jaunts with her lover. The casual cruelty of it fueled the icy fire in my veins. After Leo was engrossed in his cartoons, I retreated to my lab. My first task was to become an expert in my own supposed illness, glioblastoma. I, who had studied its merciless pathology from a clinical distance, now needed to embody it. Ironic, given that Sarah was the one truly carrying this ticking time bomb in her head. My lab's terminals gave me access to every medical database, every research paper, every patient forum detailing the subtle, insidious onset of symptoms. I delved into first-hand accounts, the persistent, dull headaches that painkillers barely touched, the increasing fatigue, a bone-deep weariness that sleep couldn't alleviate, the subtle cognitive slips, forgotten words, misplaced items, a frustrating mental fog, nausea, dizziness, visual disturbances. I cataloged them all, noting the typical progression, the nuances of how patients described their experiences. I wasn't just going to act sick. I was going to be sick, or at least indistinguishable from it to a layperson and to Sarah. My reflection in the polished surface of a dormant monitor showed a pale, strained man. The stress was already etching lines around my eyes. Good, I could use that. I began my transformation subtly. I skipped shaving for a day, then 2, cultivating a weary stubble. I started wearing older, looser-fitting clothes, as if grooming had become an effort. I practiced a slight slump, a wariness in my posture. I even began to subtly manipulate my diet. Less salt to induce a touch of water retention that might give my face a slightly puffy, unwell look. Then a shift to foods that might make me seem more gaunt over time. It was a grotesque form of method acting, my body the stage, my life the play. Later that morning, Sarah announced she was going shopping. "For some things to make you more comfortable, darling, and I need to pick up a few bits and pieces. Sarah Finch, Cyril, 02, need to return that hideous scarf Julian's ex gave him, and maybe pick up something dazzling for Monaco. Alistair will be too out of it to notice a few new charges on the card. He trusts me implicitly with the finances. Fool." Her arrogance was breathtaking. Implicit trust. She had no idea the extent to which that trust had been violated or the scrutiny her every thought was now under. I merely nodded, feigning a lethargic disinterest. "Whatever you think, dear." She returned a few hours later, laden with bags. Leo was at a friend's birthday party, a brief respite I'd engineered. The house was quiet, amplifying the tension that now felt permanently woven into its fabric. She placed a small, elegantly wrapped box on the coffee table in front of me. "I saw this, and I thought of you," she said, her voice laced with an almost cloying tenderness. You've sacrificed so much for me, for Leo, always putting us first. Even before this, I haven't always shown my appreciation. I want you to know, no matter what, we'll get through this. We'll absolutely treat it. Her eyes were shining, whether with genuine emotion or crocodile tears. It was impossible to tell without my silent informant. I picked up the box. It was heavy, clearly expensive. Inside, nestled on a velvet cushion, was a designer watch, a chunky, ostentatious chronograph, all gleaming steel and complicated dials. It was utterly unlike anything I would ever choose for myself. It screamed Julian. Notification, Sierra Finch 02. He actually looks touched. Julian has such good taste. Said this model makes a man look powerful, even if he's on his way out. Hope Alistair doesn't ask how much it cost. Had to dip into the emergency fund for this performance. Her emergency fund. Another piece of the puzzle slotted into place. The casual mention of a separate financial reserve. I filed it away. The watch felt cold and alien on my wrist as I feigned admiration. Sarah, it's beautiful. You shouldn't have. I forced a smile, the muscles in my face stiff and unwilling. The watch was a brand I vaguely recognized as one favored by newly rich athletes and wannabe moguls. Julian's aspirational demographic, no doubt. Nonsense, she cooed, fastening the clasp. You deserve it. You deserve everything. Everything you have, you mean, I thought, a cold smile touching my own lips internally. When you're gone, I'll sell this monstrosity and buy you the most basic, biodegradable urn I can find, something that will decompose as quickly as our marriage did. The thought, dark and vicious, brought a perverse sense of comfort. I looked up at her, meeting her gaze, trying to project a fragile gratitude. Thank you, Sarah. It means a lot. Then I dropped the first carefully calibrated bomb. But about the treatment, I've been thinking. All those specialists, the aggressive therapies, it's so much money, Sarah. And for what? A few more months? Maybe a year if I'm lucky? With this kind of diagnosis, I let my voice trail off, shaking my head sadly. Her expression of tender concern froze, then morphed into one of carefully calibrated protest. Alistair, don't talk like that. We haven't even explored all the options yet. Money is not an issue when it comes to your life. My phone, resting on my thigh, vibrated discreetly. Notification. Sierra Finch TL002. Emotional valence high. Extreme positive. Primary thought cluster. Is he serious? He's actually giving up? Oh my God, this is too perfect. I don't even have to persuade him. He's doing all the work for me. Julian is going to lose his mind when I tell him. Monaco, here we come. Her internal glee was a stark, sickening contrast to the Oscar-worthy performance of distress she was currently delivering. Her eyes welled up again. Her lower lip trembled. How can you even suggest giving up? For Leo? For me? I reached out, took her hand. Her skin felt clammy, or perhaps it was just my own revulsion. It's because of Leo, and because of you, that I'm thinking this way. Our savings, I don't want to leave you both with nothing but debt. And what kind of life would it be for Leo watching me fade away like that? I injected a note of tragic heroism into my voice, the noble martyr. Notification. He's so wonderfully, predictably selfless, or just stupid. Probably stupid. Better act heartbroken, though. Can't look too relieved. She pulled her hand away, paced the room, a perfect imitation of a distraught wife. No, Alistair, I won't hear it. We will fight. I'll sell whatever I have to. We'll find a way. And what would you sell, Sarah? I asked, my voice gentle, probing. Your jewelry? The car? A flicker of something, panic? Crossed her face before she smoothed it over. Notification, Sarah Finch L02. Damn him. Is he suspicious? No, can't be. He's just being dramatic. The jewelry is for me. The secret account is definitely off limits. He knows nothing about that. Secret account. Confirmed. The pieces were falling into place with a satisfying, chilling precision. We won't need to sell anything, Alistair, she said firmly, though her eyes avoided mine. We have enough. We always have. She came back, knelt before me, her expression earnest. Promise me you'll at least talk to the specialists. For me, please. I looked into her eyes, searching for any hint of the monster the Cognilink revealed. There was none, only the carefully constructed facade of a loving, desperate wife. It was a testament to her skill as a liar, or perhaps to my own previous blindness. All right, Sarah, I conceded, with a sigh that suggested immense weariness. I'll talk to them. but I'm not making any promises about aggressive treatment. I need to be realistic. Her face couldn't entirely hide the flash of triumph in her eyes before she masked it with a relieved sob, burying her face in my shoulder. Her embrace felt like a vice. Notification: Sarah Finch. Success! He'll go through the motions, then bravely decide against it. I'll be the grieving widow who tried everything. Julian will love that narrative. So tragic, so profitable. As I held her, patting her back with a feigned tenderness, a cold certainty settled over me. She was digging her own grave with every deceitful thought, every treacherous plan. And I, her supposedly dying husband, would hand her the shovel, piece by piece, symptom by symptom. The alchemy of deceit was a potent science, and I was proving to be a disturbingly adept practitioner. My grief for the woman I thought I'd married was gone, transmuted into something far more corrosive, far more focused. The pure, unadulterated desire to watch her world burn, using the fire she herself had so eagerly kindled. The Julian watch on my wrist felt like a countdown timer, not for my life, but for hers, and I would ensure every second was exquisitely painful. Chapter 4. The Cartography of Decay. The days that followed settled into a grotesque new normal, a carefully choreographed dance of deceit and observation. My mornings were dedicated to Leo, a pocket of genuine warmth in the encroaching Arctic winter of my marriage. After dropping him at kindergarten, the house would fall silent, save for the faint hum of my lab equipment, a hum that now sounded less like discovery and more like the patient thrumming of a spider's web being spun. My primary focus became the meticulous cartography of Sarah's actual undiagnosed illness, juxtaposed with the symptoms I was now tasked with performing. Glioblastoma, I knew, was a cruel and insidious thief. It stole memories, eroded personalities, and inflicted a unique brand of suffering. Sarah, blissfully unaware of the enemy within her own skull, was already subtly exhibiting some of the early telltale signs. The Cognilink, beyond her treacherous thoughts, also provided ancillary biometric data: minute fluctuations in neurotransmitter levels, subtle disruptions in sleep patterns, slight increases in intracranial pressure indicators. My creation was a medical marvel, even as it served my darker purpose. She complained more frequently of headaches, dismissing them with a wave of her hand. "Just stress, with everything going on with you, darling," she'd say, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Notification: God, this headache is splitting. Hope it's not that flu that's going around. Can't afford to get sick now. Julian's planning a weekend getaway to that new vineyard resort. Must be a tension headache. Alistair's illness is stressing me out more than I thought. The irony was a constant, bitter companion. She attributed her own genuine symptoms to the stress of my feigned illness. It was a perfect, self-sustaining loop of delusion. I, in turn, began to subtly manifest the symptoms she described, but amplified, timed for maximum impact. If she mentioned a dull ache behind her eyes, a few hours later I would be massaging my own temples, complaining of a throbbing pain that felt like my head was in a vice. I started misplacing things: my keys, my reading glasses, the remote control, feigning a frustrating fogginess. "Alistair, you're becoming so forgetful," she'd chide, a hint of impatience in her tone, quickly papered over with concern. "It's the illness, isn't it? Oh, my poor love." Notification: Gore 2. He's deteriorating even faster than I imagined. Excellent. Still, it's annoying having to look for his things all the time. Julian never misplaces anything. He's so sharp. Her lover, Julian, became a phantom yardstick against which I was constantly, unfavorably measured in her thoughts. He was sharp, attentive, exciting. I was fading, a burden, an obstacle. The Cognilink painted a damning portrait of her disdain, a constant stream of poison dripping into my consciousness. We had a joint savings account, the family nest egg, as Sarah had often called it. And then there was her emergency fund, the secret stash she thought I knew nothing about. The Cognilink had already flagged several large, unexplained withdrawals from our joint account in the preceding months, often coinciding with her work trips or girls' weekends, which I now knew were likely assignations with Julian. But her personal, hidden account was the real prize. One afternoon, while she was out, supposedly at a support group for spouses of cancer patients, a new, particularly galling addition to her repertoire of lies, I decided to probe. Notification, Sarah Finch CL02 from her support group, which the Cognilinx location data placed suspiciously close to a luxury spa Julian frequented. This massage is divine. Julian knows how to treat a girl. Almost feel guilty. With Alistair wasting away at home, almost. He'd want me to be happy, wouldn't he? Especially in his final months. The sheer unmitigated selfishness was astounding. I waited until she returned, radiating a false aura of weary empathy. "How was the support group, dear?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Oh, Alistair, it was intense," she sighed, sinking onto the sofa. "So many heartbreaking stories, but it helps knowing I'm not alone." I let a beat of silence pass. "Sarah," I began, injecting a note of worried hesitation. "I was looking over our finances, just trying to get a handle on things for the future, for you and Leo. And I was thinking, maybe we should set up a dedicated education fund for Leo. Something substantial, ring-fenced, so whatever happens to me, his future is secure." She stiffened almost imperceptibly. Her eyes, usually so quick to meet mine with false sympathy, flickered away for a moment. "Notification. An education fund now? Is he trying to tie up all the liquid assets? That's $500,000 easily if he's serious. My little nest egg. I can't touch that. That's for me and Julian, for our future. Leo will be fine. He'll have what's left." What's left? Her own son, relegated to the scraps after she and her lover had plundered the estate. The coldness of it was almost inhuman. "Oh, Alistair," she said, her voice a little too bright, a little too dismissive. "You decide, darling. Don't overthink these things. I'll live my life with you for as long as we have." She patted my hand, a gesture that felt utterly hollow. "We have plenty. Don't you worry your handsome, sick head about it." Sarah Finch 02. $500,000 for Leo's education. It's not an insignificant sum. But my private account has over $1 million. He doesn't know. He'll never know. I won't shortchange Julian. He deserves the best. And so do I, after all these years of this. Over $1 million. Hidden. Accumulated over our 10-year marriage. Siphoned off, kept secret. $1 million for her and Julian. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just an affair. This was grand larceny on an emotional and financial scale I hadn't even begun to comprehend. The audacity was breathtaking. A slow, cruel smile played on my lips, unseen by her as I turned away, feigning a cough. £1 million. Her £1 million. I knew exactly how we were going to spend it. The next phase of my plan required me to escalate my symptoms. Sarah's own headaches were becoming more persistent, her occasional forgetfulness more pronounced. It was time for me to mirror these, but with a theatricality that would leave no doubt in her mind that I was the one truly suffering. One evening, as she was recounting a, no doubt fabricated, story about a colleague's incompetence, I pressed my fingers to my temples, letting out a low groan. "Sarah, the pain, it's getting worse, and this fog in my head. I can barely follow what you're saying." She stopped mid-sentence, her initial annoyance quickly replaced by the now familiar mask of concern. "Oh, Alistair, is it very bad tonight?" Notification, Sarah Finch L02. "Here we go again. More theatrics. Still, if it means he's closer to the end, I can tolerate it. Julian's getting impatient. He wants to start looking at properties in the south of France. Properties, plural. Their avarice was a bottomless pit. Later, as she was supposedly helping me to bed, I stumbled, catching myself on the doorframe. "My balance, it feels off," I mumbled, slurring my words slightly. I'd spent hours in the lab practicing this, using VR simulations to understand the subtle motor control issues associated with frontal lobe tumors. She helped me into bed, her touch surprisingly gentle, or perhaps it was the gentleness one reserves for a fragile, soon-to-be-broken object. As she fussed with my pillows, I noticed her wince and rub her own temples. "Are you all right, Sarah?" I asked, feigning concern through my own debilitation. "You look a bit pale." "Just tired, darling," she said quickly. "Worried about you, that's all." Notification, Sarah Finch Gelatu. "My own head is killing me, and I almost tripped on the rug earlier. What is wrong with me? Must be the stress. I need a break, a real break, with Julian, away from all this sickness." She was experiencing genuine symptoms, increasingly so, and attributing them to me. It was diabolically perfect. The pain medication I occasionally gave her, innocuous supplements, of course, as I wouldn't actually harm her physically beyond letting nature take its course, did nothing for her real condition. I'd watch her swallow them, her relief palpable in her thoughts, even as her underlying glioblastoma continued its relentless advance. When she drifted off to sleep, often aided by the stronger sleeping pills, again, carefully chosen placebos, I'd procured for her stress, I would sometimes watch her. Her face in repose looked younger, almost innocent. It was a cruel trick of the light. The cognilink, my silent sentinel, told the true story. And in those quiet dark hours, as I gently massaged the sore spots on her neck and shoulders she'd complained of earlier, spots that often corresponded to referred pain from cranial pressure, I wasn't her husband. I was her executioner, meticulously cataloging her decay, planning the next act in her downfall. The cartography of her ruin was becoming clearer with each passing day, and I, the chief mapmaker, felt a chilling sense of mastery over her fate. The £1,000,000 she had squirreled away would be the fuel for her final spectacular bonfire, and I would provide the match. Chapter 5. The Theater of Affliction. The charade intensified, each day a new scene in the grim theater of my supposed decline, with Sarah an unwitting, yet complicit, leading lady in her own tragedy. My performance had to be flawless, convincing not only to her but also to any peripheral observers. The occasional concerned neighbor, Leo's kindergarten teacher, even our cleaner, Mrs. Gable, whose weekly visits were now punctuated by Sarah's hushed, sorrowful updates on my failing health. One morning, I orchestrated a particularly dramatic episode. Sarah was about to leave for work, a destination that, according to the Cognilink's geolocation data combined with her anticipatory thoughts, was actually a private viewing at a high-end art gallery with Julian, undoubtedly scouting acquisitions for their future, Alistair-free life. Notification: Sarah L02. This new Basquiat print Julian found would look stunning in the Saint-Tropez villa. Must remember to act suitably impressed. Alistair's probably still in bed, poor sod, makes mornings so much easier. As she reached for her car keys, looking crisp and professional in a tailored suit that screamed power lunch, not grieving wife, I stumbled out of our ensuite bathroom. I had spent a good 20 minutes crafting the illusion. A thin layer of glycerin mixed with a touch of water to simulate a feverish sweat on my forehead, a dusting of rice powder to give my skin a pallid, almost deathly hue, and a careful application of dark makeup under my eyes to create bruised, exhausted hollows. My lips were deliberately pale, almost blue, achieved with a concealer I'd borrowed from her makeup bag. I leaned heavily against the doorframe, my hand clutching my stomach. "Sarah," I gasped, my voice weak and raspy. I don't feel well, really not well." I let my eyes roll back slightly, a tremor running through my frame. She stopped dead, her perfectly lipsticked mouth falling open. The keys clattered to the polished oak floor. "Alistair, what is it? You look dreadful." Genuine alarm, for once, seemed to flash in her eyes, or perhaps it was just annoyance at the disruption to her schedule. Notification: Sarah Finch, Drell02. "Oh, for God's sake, now? I'm going to be late. He looks like death warmed over. Is this it? Is he actually, finally?" A flicker of hope in her thoughts, quickly suppressed. Disgusting. "Nausea," I moaned, doubling over slightly, and dizzy, everything spinning. I made a show of retching, a dry, painful sound that echoed in the hallway. She rushed to my side, her expensive perfume clashing with the scent of my feigned illness. "Lean on me, darling. Let's get you back to bed. Or maybe the hospital." There was a hint of panic in her voice now, but the Cognilink revealed its true source. Notification: Sarah Finch 02. "Hospital? No. That means doctors, questions, delays. He's supposed to be refusing treatment, not seeking it. This is not part of the plan. Julian will be furious if I'm late for the gallery. Think, Sarah, think." No hospital," I managed, shaking my head weakly. "Just need to lie down, maybe some water." I allowed myself to be guided back towards the bedroom, my weight a deliberate burden on her. The feel of her supporting me, the scent of her perfume so close, was a trial. I focused on the data stream, the cold, hard text, a shield against any residual unwanted empathy. Once I was settled back in bed, propped against a mountain of pillows, she fussed around me, dabbing my forehead with a cool cloth. Her touch was surprisingly gentle, but her thoughts were anything but. Notification: He really does look awful. Maybe this is a genuine crisis. Should I call Dr. Ramirez? No, stick to the script. He's chosen his path. I just need to be the supportive, grieving wife. The Basquiat can wait an hour, I suppose. Julian will understand, or he'd better. I let out a soft moan, clutching my head. The pain, it's like a drill. This was a direct quote from a patient forum I'd studied, a description of glioblastoma-induced headaches. Sarah's own hand went to her temple. She winced, a small, almost imperceptible movement. Notification. Sarah Finch 02. My own head is throbbing. This is unbearable. His sickness, it's like it's contagious. I need to get out of this house. Perfect. The power of suggestion, amplified by her own burgeoning symptoms. After she finally, reluctantly, left for her important meeting, assuring me she'd call to check in every hour, I waited a beat, then slowly sat up. The facade dropped. I wiped the glycerin and concealer from my face, drank a large glass of water, and felt the satisfying coolness of my actual, healthy skin. My acting, I conceded, might have been a touch over the top, but it had achieved its desired effect. It had shaken her, reinforced her belief in my rapid decline, and, most deliciously, made her attribute her own discomfort to me. The next stage involved her finances, that hidden million. It was time to help her spend it. A few days later, when I was having a good day, meaning I was merely pale and lethargic, rather than actively dying on the bathroom floor, I brought up the house. "Sarah," I said, looking around our beautifully appointed living room with a manufactured air of melancholy. "I've been thinking, this house, I know we love it, but since I got sick, the atmosphere feels heavy, stagnant. Maybe it's bad feng shui or just the association with this." I gestured vaguely at myself. She looked surprised. "Bad feng shui, Alistair? That's not like you." "Feng shui? Is he losing his mind? Or is this another ploy to get me to spend money? Wait, a new house? A fresh start? Maybe not such a bad idea. Get away from all these memories of him being sick. Somewhere bright, modern. Julian would love that." I know, I said with a weak smile. "But desperate times, right? A new place, a fresh start. Maybe it would help my spirits, and it would be better for Leo not to have these gloomy associations." Her mind, as relayed by the Cognilink, was already racing. A new house meant real estate agents, viewings, financial discussions. It meant an opportunity for her to take control, to steer us towards something that suited her future plans. Notification. Sarah Finch, GL02. A new house. Yes, I could find something fabulous. Something Julian and I could really enjoy once Alistair is gone, and I could manage the purchase. He's in no state. I could even invest some of my own funds into it, make it seem like a joint effort, then ensure it's primarily in my name. Perfect. The ease with which she embraced the idea was telling. Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into house hunting with a vigor that was startlingly at odds with her supposed role as the grieving spouse of a terminally ill man. She'd returned from viewings, her eyes sparkling, full of talk about natural light and open-plan living, quickly remembering to adopt a more somber tone when she caught my eye. Notification. Sarah Finch, GL02, after a viewing. That penthouse apartment overlooking the marina is to die for. Julian would adore the view from the master bedroom. Just need to convince Alistair it's wheelchair accessible and close to a good hospice. He'll buy it. He's so malleable now. Malleable. I let her think that. I feigned weary agreement to her suggestions, letting her guide the process. She eventually settled on a sprawling, ultra-modern monstrosity in a newly developed luxury enclave. All glass, steel, and questionable taste. It was twice the price of our current home. "It's perfect, Alistair," she gushed, showing me the glossy brochure. "So much light, and there's a ground-floor suite that would be ideal for you, with easy access to the garden." How can we afford this, Sarah?" I asked, injecting the right amount of dazed confusion into my voice. "Our savings. This is." She waved a dismissive hand. "Don't you worry your head about the finances, darling. I've spoken to my parents. They want to help. They're giving us a substantial loan, a gift, really, to see you comfortable in your final, well, to see you comfortable." Notification. Sarah Finch. Parents. As if. They'd have a fit if they knew what I was doing. No, this is my Julian and Sarah Future Fund hard at work. He'll never know. I'll just transfer the money from my private account to the solicitor. He's too sick to scrutinize the paperwork. It's brilliant. Brilliant. Yes, it was. My plan was unfolding even more perfectly than I dared hope. She was liquidating her secret stash, her ill-gotten gains, and sinking it into a tangible asset. An asset that, with a little creative legal footwork, I was already researching with a discreet solicitor specializing in complex financial separations, I could ensure she wouldn't easily walk away with. The sale of our old house and the purchase of the new one happened in a blur of paperwork, most of which Sarah handled with an efficiency that belied her supposed emotional distress. I signed where she told me to sign, my hand trembling artfully, my gaze distant and unfocused. The day we moved, or rather, the day Sarah orchestrated the move of our belongings into the new, soulless palace while I remained too weak to participate, was a milestone. She was positively radiant, her excitement barely contained as she directed the movers. Notification. Sarah, finally, my new kingdom. Just a few more weeks, maybe months, of playing nurse, and then this is all mine. Julian is going to be so impressed. He's already picked out the new sound system. As she bustled about, I watched her. Her energy was manic, a stark contrast to my feigned lethargy. But I also noticed the subtle signs she ignored. The way she occasionally rubbed her temples, the slight tremor in her hand as she signed a delivery docket, the increasing frequency of her stress headaches. Her glioblastoma was not waiting for her convenience. It was a silent, patient stalker, and its pace was quickening, right on schedule with my own dark timeline. The theater was set, the players in position, the final acts were about to begin, and the applause, I knew, would be entirely her own screams of realization. Chapter 6. The Cracks in the Facade. The new house was an abomination of modern architecture, a sterile monument to Sarah's greed. It was all sharp angles, vast expanses of cold glass, and an echoing emptiness that no amount of expensive, minimalist furniture could fill. My designated sick room was a ground-floor suite with a panoramic view of a meticulously manicured, soulless garden. It felt less like a haven and more like a gilded cage, a waiting room for a death that wasn't mine. Sarah, however, thrived in this new environment, at least initially. She flitted about, arranging and rearranging furniture, her excitement a barely veiled counterpoint to the somber pronouncements she made about my comfort and peace. The Cognilink provided a running commentary to her shallow preoccupations. Notification. Sarah Finch GL002. This imported Italian marble in the foyer is simply divine. Julian will be so impressed. Alistair hasn't even noticed it. Poor dear. Too busy fading away. Shame, really. He used to have such an eye for detail. Her eye for detail seemed to be failing her when it came to her own well-being. The headaches she'd once dismissed as stress were now a near-constant companion. She took to wearing sunglasses indoors, complaining about the glare from the vast windows. Her appetite, once healthy, became unpredictable. She'd pick at her food, often pushing it away after a few bites, claiming she was too worried about Alistair to eat. Notification. Sarah Finch. Another splitting headache, and I feel so nauseous. It must be the stress of looking after him. Or maybe that new sushi place Julian took me to wasn't as fresh as it claimed. I need to be strong. For Julian. And for when this is all over. I, meanwhile, continued my performance with a relentless consistency. I allowed my feigned symptoms to ebb and flow, mirroring the unpredictable nature of a real glioblastoma. Some days I would be relatively lucid, engaging in quiet conversation with Leo, my voice weak but my mind seemingly clear. On other days I would be confused, disoriented, plagued by blinding headaches and crippling nausea. I timed these episodes carefully, often to coincide with moments when Sarah was particularly preoccupied with her own plans or her own burgeoning discomfort. My medical consultations were masterpieces of evasion and misdirection. Sarah would insist on accompanying me, playing the role of the devoted, anxious wife. I'd allow Dr. Ramirez, who was, of course, not privy to my charade but was treating me based on the falsified reports, to ask her questions about my condition. "He seems so much weaker, doctor," Sarah would say, her voice trembling. "And the headaches, they're almost constant now. He barely eats." I would nod weakly, confirming her observations. Dr. Ramirez, a compassionate but ultimately conventional practitioner, would express her concern, suggest palliative options, and offer referrals to hospice care, all of which I would politely, bravely decline. "No hospice yet, doctor," I'd murmur. I want to be at home with my family for as long as I can. Notification, Sierra Bellator 2. Good. No hospice. That would mean strangers in the house interfering. He's making this so easy, so considerate. Though, honestly, his decline is rather unsightly. Julian finds it all a bit morbid when he visits. Julian. He had started making discreet visits to the new house, usually when Leo was at school and I was supposedly resting. The Cognalink painted vivid pictures of their encounters, their hushed whispers, their shared excitement over the future, their casual dismissal of my existence. The audacity of it, to carry on their affair under the roof I technically still shared, fueled my cold resolve. One afternoon I overheard, or rather, the Cognalink relayed, a particularly revealing conversation. Sarah was in the kitchen with Julian, who had ostensibly dropped by to check on Alistair and bring some uplifting books. Julian transcribed thought as his proximity to Sarah's active implant sometimes allowed for fragmented pickup of strong nearby neural signals if she was focused on him. So when do you think the old man will finally kick it? This waiting around is getting tedious, and that new boat I saw, it's not going to buy itself. Notification S002. Hush, Julian, he might hear. He's got surprisingly good hearing for someone on death's door. Soon, my love. Very soon. Dr. Ramirez said it could be weeks, not months. Then everything changes. The boat, Monaco, the villa, it's all waiting for us. Weeks, not months. They were actively counting down. The casual cruelty of Julian's words, the eager anticipation in Sarah's, solidified my contempt. They were vultures, circling, waiting for a feast that would never come in the way they imagined. Sarah's own physical decline was becoming more apparent, even to her. She was losing weight, her skin had taken on a sallow, unhealthy tinge, and the dark circles under her eyes were no longer solely attributable to stress. She started experiencing dizzy spells, once nearly fainting in the kitchen while trying to make herself a cup of tea. I don't know what's wrong with me, she'd stammered, clinging to the counter, her face ashen, after I coincidentally walked in. I must be anemic, all this worry. Notification. Sarah Finch L02. This is not normal. I feel dreadful. Maybe I should see a doctor. No, Alistair needs me. I can't be sick too. It's just exhaustion. I need more vitamins. Or maybe that herbal supplement Julian's naturopath recommended. Her denial was a powerful force, but reality was beginning to punch through the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. The irony was exquisite. She was so focused on my feigned illness that she was utterly blind to the genuine, life-threatening condition consuming her from within. It was time for another medical intervention, for her, disguised as one for me. I suffered a particularly severe seizure one evening, a carefully researched and executed performance involving convulsions, feigned unconsciousness, and a subsequent period of groggy disorientation. It terrified Sarah. Notification. Oh my God, a seizure! This is it! He's really going now. Call an ambulance. No. He refused aggressive intervention. What do I do? Julian! I need Julian! She didn't call an ambulance. She called Julian, her voice frantic, her thoughts a whirlwind of panic and a perverse kind of excitement. He predictably advised her to stay calm and keep Alistair comfortable, clearly unwilling to get directly involved in anything that might attract official attention. The next day, looking suitably shattered, I insisted on seeing Dr. Ramirez. Sarah, you have to come with me, I pleaded weakly. I don't remember much. You need to tell the doctor what happened. During the consultation, while Sarah recounted the horrifying details of my seizure, her own hand trembled and she kept rubbing her temples. Dr. Ramirez, astute despite her lack of the full picture, noticed. Mrs. Finch, Dr. Ramirez said gently after I had been examined. You look exhausted, and you seem to be in some discomfort yourself. Are you feeling all right? Sarah waved a dismissive hand. I'm fine, doctor. Just worried sick about Alistair. It's taking its toll naturally. Notification. Sarah Finch, 2. Don't focus on me. He's the one dying. My head is splitting, and I feel like I'm going to throw up. But it's just stress. It has to be. Perhaps, Dr. Ramirez said, her gaze thoughtful. But sometimes caregivers neglect their own health. When was your last physical, Mrs. Finch? Sarah hesitated. Oh, a while ago. I've been meaning to schedule one, but with Alistair. The truth, as I knew from her Cognilink chatter months prior, was that she had skipped her annual physical that year. She'd been on a surprise romantic getaway with Julian in the Caribbean, a trip funded, no doubt, by her secret account. Well, Dr. Ramirez continued, while you're here and given the stress you're under, perhaps we could just run a few basic checks. Blood pressure, a quick neurological assessment, just to be on the safe side. Sarah looked cornered. Notification, Sarah Finch 002. Checks? Now? I don't have time for this, but if I refuse, it'll look suspicious. Fine. Get it over with. It's probably nothing anyway. Reluctantly, she agreed. I watched, feigning a weak disinterest, as Dr. Ramirez performed a few simple neurological tests, eye tracking, coordination, reflex checks. Sarah stumbled slightly during the tandem gait test. Her hand-eye coordination was a little off. Dr. Ramirez's professional expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Everything seems mostly in order, Mrs. Finch, Dr. Ramirez said smoothly, though her tone lacked complete conviction. Probably just stress, as you say. But do make an appointment for a full physical soon. It's important to take care of yourself, especially when you're caring for someone else. Sarah nodded quickly, eager to leave. But a seed of doubt had been planted, not just in Dr. Ramirez's mind, but more importantly, in Sarah's. The Cognilink picked up her anxious, dismissive thoughts on the drive home. Notification, Sarah Finch 02. That was unsettling. Why did I stumble like that? And my vision felt a bit blurry when she shone that light in my eyes. No, it's nothing. It's stress. Alistair is the sick one, not me. I refuse to be sick. The cracks in her facade were widening, not just the facade of the loving wife, but the facade of her own invincibility. Her body was betraying her, and the fear, though she fought to suppress it, was beginning to seep through. My theater of affliction was working perfectly, drawing her deeper into a web of her own making, while the real monster, her glioblastoma, was an unacknowledged, uncredited co-star, steadily stealing the show. The final act was approaching, and the denouement promised to be spectacular. Chapter 7, The Unveiling. The carefully constructed illusion of my decline was reaching its zenith, while Sarah's actual deterioration accelerated with a brutal, undeniable force. The universe, it seemed, possessed a taste for the profoundly ironic. Her once infrequent headaches were now a constant, agonizing presence, her vision blurred, and episodes of vertigo left her clinging to furniture for support. The chic, oversized sunglasses became a permanent fixture, shielding her eyes not just from the light, but from the dawning horror in her own reflection. Julian's visits grew less frequent. The Cognilink relayed Sarah's increasingly desperate, pleading thoughts directed at him, and his increasingly dismissive, impatient replies. Notification, Sarah Finch, Goriel 02. Julian, please, you have to come over. I feel so awful. I think I might be really sick. He says it's just stress, but followed by fragmented thought intercept, Julian, likely via text. Sarah, darling, you're just overwrought. Alistair's condition is dragging you down. Pull yourself together. I'm busy with the boat deal. We'll celebrate when things are settled. The boat deal had become his convenient excuse. Her knight in shining armor was proving to be made of tin and rapidly rusting in the face of actual adversity. The moment she ceased to be an asset, a pathway to my fortune, and instead became a liability, a genuinely sick woman, his ardor cooled with predictable speed. One afternoon, Sarah collapsed in the hallway, a small, whimpering heap. Leo found her. His terrified cries brought me shuffling from my room. I knelt beside her, my feigned weakness a stark contrast to the genuine terror in her eyes. Alistair, she whispered, her voice thin and reedy. I can't. My legs. Notification, Nora Finch 02. This isn't stress. This is something terrible. Am I dying too? No, it can't be. Julian, where is Julian? I helped her to the sofa, my touch deliberately gentle, a parody of concern. I sent Leo to his room with his tablet, assuring him Mummy was just very tired. Then I sat beside her, taking her cold hand. Sarah, I said softly, my voice laced with faux sympathy. You've been pushing yourself too hard, looking after me. You need to rest. Maybe it's time we called your parents. They could help. The mention of her parents seemed to galvanize her. Notification, Sarah Finch CL2. My parents? No, they can't see me like this. They'll ask questions. They'll know I haven't been honest about Alistair's finances, about anything. Her secrets were a tangled web, and she was now hopelessly ensnared. Later that week, she received a call from Dr. Ramirez's office. They wanted her to come in for a follow-up, to discuss the anomalies from her brief checkup. Sarah tried to dismiss it, but the nurse was insistent. She went, alone this time, her dread a palpable force even through the cognilink. The hours she was gone were, for me, filled with a grim anticipation. When she returned, she was a ghost of her former self. Her face was ashen, her eyes hollow pits of despair. She walked past me without a word, retreating to the master bedroom. Her bedroom now, as we'd long since maintained separate sleeping quarters under the guise of my illness. The cognilink was a torrent of raw, unfiltered terror. Notification, Sarah Chiro 2, glioblastoma. She said glioblastoma. The same thing Alistair has. No, not has, the same thing I have. It's me. It was always me. The headaches, the dizziness, oh God, the report, Alistair's report. Was it? The dawning, horrifying realization was like watching a slow-motion car crash. She was piecing it together, the terrible symmetry of our illnesses, the impossible coincidence. I let her stew in her terror for a while. Then, in the late afternoon, I shuffled to her bedroom door, tapping weakly. "Sarah, are you all right, dear? You've been so quiet." She didn't answer. I pushed the door open a crack. She was sitting on the edge of her unmade bed, staring blankly at the wall. A crumpled medical report, her actual diagnostic report, which Dr. Ramirez had evidently given her, clutched in her hand. "Sarah," I repeated, stepping into the room. She looked up, her eyes focusing on me with a terrifying, dawning comprehension. "Alistair," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "This report, it says I have cancer, brain cancer. The same as you." I let a mask of confusion settle on my features. "You, Sarah? But that's impossible. I'm the one who's sick. We saw my report." Her gaze was unwavering, a desperate, pleading intensity in her eyes. Notification, Sarah too. He looked so confused, so genuinely ill. How can this be? Did the hospital mix up the reports? Two people, same rare cancer, same household? Or did he? The suspicion was there, a tiny, poisonous seed. "Sarah," I said, my voice filled with a carefully crafted sorrow. Perhaps the stress of my illness has manifested in you somehow? A sympathetic sickness? Dr. Ramirez did say you were under immense strain." I was feeding her the narrative she herself had clung to for so long, but the seed of suspicion was taking root. "No," she said, shaking her head slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. This feels too real. The doctor, she was so certain. She said the tumor, it's been growing for months, Alistair." Her gaze sharpened. The pieces were clicking into place in her mind, the awful, damning truth assembling itself. The timing of my diagnosis, my convenient refusal of aggressive treatment, her own escalating symptoms. Notification. Months. He showed me that report months ago, right after my physical. He swapped them. He knew all along. He let me think he was dying, while I was the one. Oh my God, Julian, the money. He knew. How could he know? The raw panic in her thoughts was a symphony to my vengeful ears. It was time for the unveiling, the final, brutal act. I straightened up, the feigned weakness falling away like a shed skin. The slump in my shoulders disappeared. The vacant look in my eyes sharpened into a cold, piercing focus. The transformation was subtle, yet total. I was no longer the dying Alistair. I was the architect of her ruin, standing before his crumbling edifice. Sarah gasped, recoiling as if struck. "Alistair? What?" "Deep down, Sarah," I said, my voice no longer weak or tremulous, but clear, cold, and resonant with a terrible authority. "Aren't you wondering why I'm not the one at death's door? Why, despite my terminal illness, I seem to be remarkably composed?" She trembled, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and dawning, horrified comprehension. The crumpled report slipped from her nerveless fingers. You knew," she breathed, the words barely audible. "You've known all along that it was me." "Known?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Oh, Sarah, I've known more than you could possibly imagine." I took a step closer, enjoying the way she flinched. "I know about Julian. I know about the trips, the gifts, the plans for Monaco and the south of France. I know about the secret bank account, the one with over £1 million you siphoned from our life together, earmarked for your future with him, once I was conveniently out of the picture." Her face, already pale, turned a ghastly shade of gray. How could you possibly?" I tapped my temple lightly. Let's just say I have a unique insight into your inner monologue, Sarah. Every selfish thought, every treacherous plan, every whispered endearment to your lover while you thought I was oblivious, dying in the next room. I heard it all. I didn't need to mention the Cognilink specifically. The implication of an almost supernatural knowledge was far more terrifying. Notification. Sarah Finch, too. Heard my thoughts? Is he insane? Or that implant, that wellness monitor he put in me. Oh God, he's a monster. He played me, he watched me plan while he knew. You poisonous, hateful man, she finally spat, the words laced with venom, her facade of the grieving wife utterly shattered, replaced by the cornered, desperate creature she truly was. Her thoughts echoed the sentiment, amplified with curses. Poisonous? I echoed, raising an eyebrow. Am I, Sarah? As poisonous as a wife who wishes her husband dead so she can run off with his money and her lover? As poisonous as the woman who accepted a designer watch from me, a watch she knew was picked out by that same lover, a trinket to celebrate my impending demise? I gestured to the ostentatious chronograph still on my wrist, a constant, glittering reminder of her betrayal. I wouldn't have known about that little detail, or countless others, if I couldn't hear the charming symphony of your true intentions, my dear. Panic, raw and primal, contorted her features. She tried to stand, to flee, but her legs buckled. She slumped against the bed, sobbing, a broken, wretched thing. At that precise, almost theatrically timed moment, the doorbell rang, repeatedly, insistently. That, I said calmly, will be your parents. I took the liberty of calling them. I thought they should be here, for you, in your time of need, and perhaps to witness the final act of this rather unfortunate play. I also knew from a discreet inquiry via my solicitor that any significant assets in her name, like the new house bought with her secret funds, would be much harder to untangle if she were to become incapacitated or pass away with her parents as immediate next of kin, rather than me, her duplicitous husband. It was a cold, pragmatic calculation. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes wild. No, not them! Alistair, please! But it was too late. I could hear Mrs. Gable, our cleaner, who I'd asked to stay late, letting them in. The sound of worried voices, her parents, drifted up the stairs. Sarah looked from me to the door, then back to me, her face a mask of utter desolation and betrayal. The fight went out of her. She simply stared, the enormity of her ruin, her illness, and my calculated, devastating revenge crashing down upon her. As her parents' footsteps reached the landing, she let out a keening wail and collapsed, unconscious, onto the floor. Doctors would be called, there would be frantic efforts. But the true unveiling had already occurred. She knew, and that knowledge, I suspected, would be a torment far greater than any physical pain her illness could inflict. I stepped back, observing the scene with a chilling detachment. My revenge was complete. As I turned to leave her to the care of others, a single unbidden tear traced a path down my cheek, for the woman she had been, or perhaps for the man I had become. The victory felt hollow, the triumph ashes in my mouth. Downstairs I met her distraught parents, my face a mask of grave concern. She just collapsed, I told them, my voice heavy with feigned sorrow. The doctors, they said her cancer, it's very aggressive. I would be the grieving husband, the devoted father. I would care for Leo. I would even, in a twisted display of magnanimity, offer comfort and support to her parents. The monster she had seen in her final lucid moments would be carefully locked away. But it was there. I knew it. And as I held my son later that night, the weight of my actions, the sheer, cold precision of my vengeance settled upon me. I had won. But what exactly had I gained, apart from the bitter satisfaction of a meticulously served cold dish? The question echoed in the sterile silence of the house she had bought with her stolen future.